it seemed that everything I did today had nothing to do with writing. Um, Most of my day had basically nothing really to do with any kind of aspect of writing at all. The reason for that, honestly, was as much about just dealing with some outside stuff um, as it was actually dealing with my writing in a different way. Um, I obviously, if you saw earlier, I did a quick little 40-minute chess video this morning when I first got up, but a good portion of the rest of the day actually was spent having a little bit of a powwow with a buddy of mine. So we sat down. He's a writing friend of mine, and we just basically discussed what had happened, both the book rejection, obviously, and where to go from here. Where to sort of take things after that. And his advice was, I think, I took it to heart. I mentioned obviously the value yesterday of having those writer friends, of having sort of a circle to kind of help navigate you through some of the tougher times here, to having people to play off of. And the advice, which I'll go over basically probably maybe next month when I go over my 2023 goals for next year. But the advice basically was, you got to get back in there. You've got to get back in. You've got to continue this process. Even to get rejected this close to the finish line with a potential publisher, you've got to go back. You've got to try again with another one. You've got to basically send your story back out there, which I thought was interesting. I thought it because, again, at the time, it seemed like this publisher was like my last chance, right? They literally were the last people I had, the very last ones I had queried. So it felt in many ways like they were my last chance, and that informed, I think, a lot of the reason why, the other day I had said, I'm basically done with the story. That's not going to be seen again. And so a lot of today was discussing what I wanted to do, as far as getting things published for next year, ways to approach it, things like that. They're much more versed in the business of writing than I am, so it's good to play off that. And so not a lot was done. What you see on the computer basically here today is just me rereading a section here, making some notes, and again, just going through the wrestling novel that I'm working on. So with that novel, it's still on track to go out at the end of the year, so that's not going to change. But potentially what we could see now is maybe getting tarot requeried as well, maybe 2 queries at the same time, 2 different novels. We'll see. But it seems to be where things are heading at this point. In this process, a lot of times you want to move quickly. You want to move very, very fast, and you want to get that big win. When I was going for my MFA, everyone wanted that agent. Everyone wanted to query and get the agent because they thought the agent was going to be the thing that was going to separate them from, basically separate them from everyone else. They thought getting the agent was going to solve their problems. Everyone, even myself at the time, had thought, all right, you get the agent at that point. All right, your agent will get you the publishing deal. Publishing deal will go down, and then all you have to do is just continue to write the books. You've got to write the books, and they'll take care of everything else. It doesn't work that way. There's always some greater challenge. I do think that if you can get the agent, if you can sort of get potentially a nice deal on your first one, that's getting through that door and getting that break will definitely change things. It'll definitely change your life. I do think that. By no means am I underplaying it, but there's always going to be another challenge. There's always going to be another sort of thing that comes up. And to be honest, if you're trying to get into the writing business, trying to go the traditional route, a point that was brought up today, which is very, very true, is most people with their debut novels they simply don't get deals. They don't necessarily get deals. They don't necessarily even get them published. And I'm not talking about the first book you write. When I say debut, I'm not talking about the first book you write. I'm talking about the first book that's actually of a quality that's good enough to be published, right? Which could be your 5th book you ever write, could be the 6th one, your 10th, your 12th. Oftentimes you're not even, they don't, your debut, that first book, it's through a micropress. It's through, you self-publish it. It's through a micropress. It's through some smaller means. Maybe you get the agent and you don't get the deal. Often, people when they query agents, I think, what is it, like only 5% of new writers get an agent or something like that. I think when they query it, and of the 5% that debut, I think only 1 in 4 get a publishing deal after that. Or something. The numbers are very staggering. So it's important to keep that in mind. And I'm saying this for everyone else as much as I'm saying it for myself as well. That this process, it takes a while. And perhaps accumulating the small wins matters more. Perhaps it is about getting the smaller wins. Maybe it's not about getting that agent for that one debut novel, right? And getting, your $10,000-$20,000 advance or whatever it is. Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about having your first novel, your second novel, too. Maybe it's about getting a small press. Maybe it's about having, a small press get those first 2 novels done, building up that small resume and moving your way up to eventually looking attractive to an agent for maybe your 3rd book, your 4th, your 5th, maybe get an agent at that point. Because then you have the backlog. So when someone finally reads your book, right, when your first book that actually hits the mainstream bookstores and people can go to Barnes & Noble and buy it, maybe it's about getting that one and having that one be your 5th one, so that way your 4 earlier works are on your backlog so they can start reading through those. My friend today had said, the way to sell more books is to write another book and eventually have one of them, several down the line, catch fire. So have your 5th book, 6th book go big, right? And have the 4 or 5 other ones before then, have that be your backlog that they read through later on. That's when those early ones will sell. So maybe it's about that. Maybe it's about just building up the backlog for now with a series of small wins and successes in getting that way. The story I'm writing right now, right? The main story is a wrestling story. It's a story basically about these 2 small town guys living in northern New Hampshire and there's a contract offer for one of them to become basically a nationally syndicated wrestler and make a bunch of money. And they both go to very extreme lengths, both in a storyline and also in real life, to sabotage the other one to get this contract and leave it. In the research for the novel and what I did basically when I thought about writing it was I went through and I kind of saw how the wrestling process works, how wrestling schools work, how the process of becoming a big guy, right, who gets paid the $1 million, who you see on TV in like the WWE, right, you see that. I looked up basically what the process is like. A lot of people, they don't just sign with these big companies right away. A lot of them spend, a decade training in these smaller promotions. They go to wrestling schools and they train for decades in these small promotions and they get noticed. And then eventually they get a big contract offer, right? Which is kind of what the plot of my novel is in many years. It's basically that. But maybe I need to take that attitude. Maybe there's a deeper thing with that to learn. Maybe there's something to take away with getting these small wins on these small presses, with these smaller venues, getting these wins, standing out from them, and building your way up, kind of go up the stepping stone, use that as a stepping stone to move further up, to view this as a process, not so much just, a golden ticket that you get from an agent, but just a gradual process until, the agents are looking for you, maybe. It's interesting to think about, and it does reframe a lot of what I've thought about this process. Something to consider, things to consider. So with that, I will be back tomorrow. But until then, happy writing and stay safe.